Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. And this is the first episode in a series that I've been wanting to start for a while. And it's called What I Talk About When I Talk About Dungeon Diving. And it's just going to be kind of a free-flowing discussion series on various topics about the kinds of games I like. My dharma, as Wally Brando might say. So I've been wanting to do this for a while. I have a couple discussion things going through, perhaps various mechanisms that I like, or designers that I like, companies that I enjoy, or different aspects about the games that inform my opinion on this genre. And in addition to that, just also things about me and why I like the games that I like. So a lot of times on places like Reddit or Imgur, whatever, people say, "Hey, everyone post pictures of all your board games," and I'll do that, and inevitably, more than a handful of comments will be like, "You have like 100 copies of the same game." Or don't you think your collection should be more diversified, more varied? Don't you, or as if like a board game collection is some kind of signifier of the deepness of somebody's person or something weird like that. A lot of people attach identity to their hobbies, and I think that's really dangerous to do. Like I don't need to wear shirts all the time that say like I'm a dungeon diver or dungeon crawling rules, or I don't need to wear like shirts all the time that have synthesizers on them. My hobbies are things that I enjoy, but they don't define me as a person. And so it is a little weird sometimes trying explaining to people why I just collect these kinds of games. I play all kinds of games because we have a bunch of people in our game group who, I mean, totally, we probably, I don't know. With all the people I play games with, we probably have like 1,000 games. So basically any game I want to play, one of my friends owns it. And so that is really nice for me because I can like narrowly focus on just a certain kind of game that I want to play and collect. So anyways, so why do I like dungeon crawls? That is the topic for this first episode. And I do think that it's actually a pretty easy answer, and it pretty much stems quite easily from nostalgia. So there are moments in your life when you're growing up, when you're younger, from like elementary school through high school, where these huge, impactful, important watershed moments where when you experience something for the first time, it becomes a very special thing in your life. This happens with all kinds of things. And this is how we develop, who we are as people, when we are developing our tastes, when we are forming our groups of friends. All of these things help to, create the people that we become. And I have a slew of moments like that I remember very vividly, all revolving around traditional games, pen and paper games, games made with cardboard, analog games, stemming really all the way back from like around 1984, I believe. Yeah, when I was in fourth grade, playing D&D Redbox for the first time. So I grew up in the kind of like the peak of the Satanic Panic. For those of you who don't know what that is, look it up. I don't want to go too deep into it because I do want to save some of that topic for when I talk about another game. Where did it go? I thought I had it. Oh yeah. For when I talk about Mertwig's Maze. But anyways, So I grew up during that time, the Satanic Panic. So look it up. During that time, the Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy adventure games were largely considered evil, especially in Christian communities. And so I grew up as a kid of two ministers. They were very super open-minded, liberal, awesome parents, awesome ministers. Like a few of the rare good examples of Christians. Believe it or not, some of those do exist. But so Dungeons and Dragons was a big no-no. Even though I could read Tolkien, I could read C.S. Lewis, I could read other fantasy, there was a dark kind of mythical power surrounding Dungeons and Dragons based completely off of misinformation, urban legend, and fear-mongering. And so when I was introduced to Dungeons and Dragons in fourth grade from a kid that lived down the street named Matt, I would go to his house and we would play, and we would make characters and run each other through little dungeons and stuff. That was such an important moment because, one, I feel like I was doing something really bad, even though like I totally knew that I wasn't. I mean, there was no difference between this, what I was doing, and the things I was reading in like The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings or Conan or anything like that. But there was just something that people were afraid of about Dungeons and Dragons. And lo and behold, it comes out now and it's like a super positive thing where you build connections. And I mean, you don't need me to explain to you the positive benefits of role-playing games. But so that was one of my early memories. And then from that point on, I have tons of board game memories. Memories of playing Axis and Allies and Fortress America, Shogun. And then in high school, getting introduced to Games Workshop, which I've discussed before, and hitting, Talisman and Warhammer and Space Hulk, and then being into all kinds of different role-playing games, stuff like we were really into the Palladium series with TMNT and Robotech, Ninjas and Super Spies, and then we would play Champions, and just so there's all of these memories that I call them, those times they were effortlessly fun. It never felt like a big to-do. It was just like at school at lunch, we would go into the science lab and we would play some role-playing game or some board game. On the weekends, we would go to a hall and kind of like rent out this hall or something, and we would play on a Saturday or a Sunday. We would play a role-playing game all day, and it never felt like a big to-do. It was just like, it felt spontaneous. It felt like it was just a group of friends who we would get together, and for a few hours we would transport our imaginations to these great fantastical worlds and completely forget about all of the other BS going on in high school and that kind of stuff. And those memories are super, super important to me. And I remember those times very, very fondly. And so a lot of those memories are wrapped around the fantasy and science fiction genres. And so that is ultimately why I still play these games today, why I collect these games, specifically these kinds of games. Because I want to transport my mind back to that time in a positive way. I don't really feel like there's like a regression or anything. It's more like I'm doing it because I think that keeping your imagination sharp is super important. And as people grow older, as we, I feel like a lot of adults lose the power of their imagination. The imagination is a tool, and if you don't use it, it's just going to get dull and worn out. And you've got to keep honing your imagination. And these games, they do that because you can set them up, and then on your table you have this world that you can go into for a few hours by yourself. You're playing solo or with some friends. And so it's a little more work as you get older because it's a little harder to schedule. It's a little harder to, as an adult, I think, to shift our minds into that realm of make-believe. And so you have to practice it. And when you get out of practice, it's a little harder to focus. It's so easy to be distracted and just to not be able to fully get into the characters, the scenarios. But when you do, when I do now, I still can grasp onto a little bit of that power that these games had in my life when I was younger, and that's really the reason why. Some people feel like nostalgia is a negative thing, and I guess it can be if you let it like control all aspects of your life. But when it comes to hobbies really are, when you think about it, just things that adults do to maintain a sense of youthfulness in their lives, ways to do things that aren't work, ways to do things that are purely for fun and for sharpening your mind or your body. And yeah, so I think that's about it for this topic. If you guys have any topics that you would like for me to discuss, let me know. Hit me up, because I'm hoping this series is nice to do because it allows me to just kind of like freeform discuss various things without having to learn rules for a game, which that's one thing, man. There's hardly any time, or I feel like there's always time, but I feel like you really have to prioritize your time being into board games in order to like read rules. Because right now I have set up for the next video Fallen Land, a post-apocalyptic board game, and that has been a lot of fun. Talk about a nostalgia trip. That I have a whole introduction when I do that video about a part of my childhood that game is totally reminds me of. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. So well, I hope you guys like this video, and yeah, let me know any topics you want me to discuss, or let me know like why you like these kinds of games, like what draws you to fantasy, to dungeon crawls, to science fiction, to like these like genre ghetto games, as opposed to maybe like more Euro games or party games or that kind of stuff. So, all right, guys, take it easy. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.